A couple days ago I was watching this scene in Andor, and this shot pops up, and the first thing that crosses my mind is, I recognize that. Not in a, oh, I've seen that in another show or film before, but in a, I've been there kind of way. And then I immediately thought, no, that's crazy. Obviously, I haven't been there. This is clearly a fake location. But then it cut to the next shot, which just further confirmed my feeling. Look at this footage I shot in London over the summer at a place called the Barbican Centre. I don't have any shots that line up exactly with the shots from Andor, but you can tell based on certain design features and elements that this is the real location where they shot this Coruscant scene for Andor. Obviously the version in the show is heavily modified and extended with VFX, but I think this approach of grounding the visual effects in Andor within real world physicality and locations plays a big role in why the show feels so real and lived in. Andor is 100% my favorite post-Disney Star Wars piece of media so far. I'm kind of low-key a Star Wars fan. I always thought the world was cool and the original trilogy are undeniable classics, but I honestly stopped watching a lot of the newer Disney stuff because it just wasn't meeting the standards of storytelling that I find enjoyable for a lot of the stuff I like to spend time watching. Most of it feels like an executive or producer was looking for something to make that would be successful and then trying to make that, rather than telling a story in the Star Wars world because they had an actually interesting or compelling story to tell. But I think Andor is great. To me, it's everything I wanted from a Star Wars reboot. It doesn't just rehash things we've already seen or try to go bigger and better. Instead, it explores this interesting world and story from a completely fresh perspective. I want to dig into why I've been enjoying the show so much, why I think it feels so real, and I'll keep the video spoiler free so you can watch it no matter how much of the show you've seen. Let's compare the opening of two different Star Wars shows. In the Obi-Wan show, see how this shot starts on the wide of the VFX and then pulls back to include the parts of the scene that are real. To me, it looks kind of strange and fake. This whole sequence feels off, down to the weird camera shake that it looks like they're adding in post. Now compare that to the opening of Andor. What are the big differences here? There are three different techniques being used kind of all together in this opening that show up throughout the show that I want to highlight. The first element is the priority given to the real elements of the scene. Andor first establishes the very tangible physical elements of the scene. The light, rain, and movement from the point of view available to a human, and then it transitions into showing the VFX elements that are added in post in the background. I think doing things this way makes the VFX feel a lot more cohesive for some reason. We see the real stuff, which we can kind of intuitively know is real, and then within that context, the VFX stuff feels like a part of that reality. Go in the other direction, and when we see the VFX stuff, we kind of know subconsciously that it's fake. And then we have this sense that the real stuff is just existing within the fake stuff, which feels much less cohesive to me. The second technique is to focus on sensory details.
Charges.
Loitering at the scene of a crime, walking an unleashed massive animal fouling.
This helps ground the visual effects, but it's also just a part of good world building throughout the show.
I needn't tell you how wrong you were about Uncle Harlow.
But you will.
The crackle of a campfire, the feeling of brokenness to a piece of equipment, the texture and sound of food.
You can live on it. You may question your existence after a few days.
The glow of sunlight coming through a window onto a character's face. These are the sensory details that make the world the characters exist in feel like you could touch it and feel it because they're touching it and feeling it. These sensory details go, I think, a long way towards making it feel like the characters exist within a multi-dimensional space and aren't just standing on a set or in front of a green screen. And this is one way the show really benefits from shooting on location. There's been a lot of discussion about the other Star Wars shows' use of the volume, and I think this technique can be really effective and has been a step up from just shooting on a green screen for a lot of the work that these shows are doing. But there will always be things that are just harder to get in a studio. For a scene like this, the real fire, the water dripping from the ceiling, and the way you can see their breath can all happen naturally when you're filming on location, but would take tons of effort to actually recreate on a set.
Memorable, isn't it?
The third technique we see in this opening, and that's used throughout the show very effectively, is perspective. We don't just swoop in from above on a digital landscape of this city. We see it from the walkway, from Andor's perspective. A lot of times these days, if I'm being honest, my eyes just kind of glaze over when I see these kind of digital wide establishing shots. For me, so often they don't actually do anything towards making me understand what the characters are experiencing or what the place feels like. When I'm watching a show like this and I'm trying to get emotionally invested in what the characters are experiencing, I don't want to feel like I'm riding in a helicopter over the location the characters are standing in. I want to feel like I'm standing in the location with them. One of the things that Andor does really well is show us the details of the worlds from an inside perspective. You're actually looking at and seeing these worlds from the same perspective as the characters, and these shots put you in their shoes. A lot of shows jump from a wide establishing VFX shot straight to close-ups within a scene, on a green screen, or within a smaller set. And when they do that, they skip past the portions where we as the viewer get to see the locations in the same way we often experience locations in our real lives. But the show's use of perspective goes far beyond just how the VFX are presented, and it's a big part of what I love about the show. We also experience the story from the perspective of the characters that are within it. As the audience, we know about a lot of the big level, huge Star Wars ships and politics and events that are taking place on a grander scale, but the characters in this story don't have that broad overview experience. They're operating with limited knowledge and trying their best to do what they can to further the rebellion while they have to make judgments based on the little amount of information they know. And the show puts us inside that perspective. We don't get information or get to see things that the individual characters don't get to see. I mean, imagine you're a character who spent their whole life on a minor planet, just minding your own business, and maybe you've heard about a Star Destroyer, but you've never seen one, and suddenly this appears in your sky. Terrifying. Recontextualizing this big iconic thing by showing it from a completely different perspective is a great way to breathe some fresh life into a cool piece of world building that has almost become stale and commonplace in the Star Wars canon at this point. It's not really that we've never seen these ships from the perspective of the ground before in Star Wars media, but what Andor really commits to is only showing us these things from the character's perspective. The way they use the ships in this show is closer to how a good horror film director uses a monster in their movies.
Get down, Tuckins!
They show just little bits here and there, and it's more the implication of what that means than actually seeing it that creates suspense and drama for the viewers. A lot of what I'm talking about here is not any one thing, but ultimately what I would describe as the show having a specific vision. What makes this illusion of reality work is everything working together. The props, the cinematography, the set design, the costume design, all of it is in service of the story and also telling that story in a specific way. In an article for Rolling Stone, lead actor Diego Luna said something that I think encapsulates the vision for the show really well. We are stressing that change and revolution happen when regular people decide to do something. It's just regular people trying to survive in the darkest time in this galaxy and finding out they can't take it anymore. It's about a system that is choking society. The theme of the rebellion being driven and fueled by regular people isn't just created by the writing and what the show's about, it's reinforced by the style of the show. The regularness and everydayness of the characters is conveyed through the show's commitment to creating this sense of reality. It's conveyed through tiny things like the fact that the characters are actually eating and drinking frequently throughout the show, because these are just regular people going about their lives trying to figure out how to create or squash a rebellion at the same time.
I couldn't sleep.
It's natural.
I need to be at my best.
Andor is doing something that I think is really original within the Star Wars world. It's stepping away from this huge feeling of destiny, fate, and mythos that runs through most of the canon. It's not that that's inherently better, but I think doing that allows the show to explore some complex themes and new territory in a way that wasn't really possible before in any of the other Star Wars stuff. It's saying, what if we looked at the rebellion and really examined the parts that aren't about shooting a huge ship down with lasers or training to become an elite warrior class so you can fulfill your destiny and save the galaxy? It's saying, what if we examine the complex moral and ethical dilemmas faced by each individual as they feel cornered into fighting for what they believe in? What if we focused in on the compromise and the gray areas? To me, the beauty of this show is all the characters surrounding Cassian Andor, an opportunistic mercenary who gets caught up in the rebellion.
He knows nothing about any of it.
The show explores with nuance how every character has to make sacrifices, compromises, or pay a price in order to get what they want. The scenes of Imperial opposition as well aren't cartoonish. Instead, it focuses on the nuance of bureaucratic politics and how individuals striving for power can create tyrannical overreach. These are what feel like real-world stakes that are more relevant to our lives. It's not about being plucked out of obscurity and trained for greatness. It isn't just a simple commitment to fight against a pure image of evil. It's a world where you have to choose between two different values that you hold that have suddenly come into conflict because of external factors that are outside of your control.
I won't have peace. I'll be worried about you all the time.
That's just love.
You know, like stuff we have to deal with as humans sometimes. Ultimately, Andor is a well-constructed, well-written, suspenseful, sci-fi spy thriller that also happens to be a Star Wars show. Thanks so much for watching. I want to talk about two things real quick. If you want to help support my content, you can go to patreon.com/ThomasFlight. When you become a patron, you can get access to cool perks like a monthly podcast where I give a short spoiler-free review of everything that I watch. There's a bunch of bonus videos on there and writing, things that you can't find anywhere else. If you've been enjoying my work, I'd appreciate it if you'd consider becoming a patron and supporting my channel directly. I also want to tell you about my podcast, Cinema of Meaning, that I do with fellow video essayist Tom Vanderlinden from the channel Like Stories of Old. Every week we discuss a movie and we really try to dive into not just the technical aspects or reviewing the film, but kind of dive into a deeper thematic exploration of what we think is going on in the film. We've discussed a bunch of great movies already, and I've really been enjoying these discussions with Tom, so I'd be happy if you check it out if that sounds interesting to you. The links will be in the description, but you can also search for Cinema of Meaning wherever you find podcasts. Thanks so much for watching this video, and again, special thank you to my patrons for making this video possible.